Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice Radio. So today, we're going to be having a little bit of a look at another one of these new cards that are going to be coming out in the Detective Pikachu set. We're having a little bit of a look today at Arcanine. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. There's a new Arcanine coming out, and the ability is incredibly good. So if we start off having a look at the basics, they're all just a little bit rubbish. 120 HP puts you right in the firing line for something like Zoroark or the Buzzwole from Forbidden Light, which is not ideal. The retreat cost of 3 means you are 1 away from being able to use buff padding to get extra HP, and it's still high. And then your weakness to water. Okay, water isn't a great typing at the moment, but I showed you the Greninja from this set just yesterday, probably, and that was really good. So, as we look at the basics here, it's not great. Now, I do like the fact that you are hitting weakness against stuff like Celebi and Venusaur, while also hitting weakness against stuff like Duskmane and Necrozma. One of the awesome things about being a fire type is you are hitting 2 weaknesses. Plus, you end up getting Kiawe. Plus, you end up getting stuff like Heat Factory Prism Star, and they will accelerate energy and help you draw cards respectively. And there are things to like here. But I think the best thing here is probably the ability. And it's a fairly unique ability. It's not one that most Pokemon have. For as long as Arcanine is your active Pokemon, reduce all damage done to your benched Pokemon by 30. So it's actually protecting all of your benched Pokemon. And if my French holds up, and I did basically translate these myself, so fingers crossed, it seems to say, as long as this Pokemon is active, all of your Pokemon take 30 less damage from attacks of your opponent. So, yeah, it would also prevent damage done to Arcanine by 30. And this is where we can really start getting a little bit tricky. We'll get to the attack in a moment. You can already see what it does. The attack here is unremarkable. But what I like is the fact that as long as Arcanine is in the active, you've got a little bit of protection. And let's not forget here, Arcanine is a single prize Pokemon. So, even if your opponent's whittling down and KOing you, you're staying around for a little bit. Because actually what we have here is not 120 HP. It's basically 150 HP. And there is a gigantic difference between 120 and 150. And then, of course, if you want to go a bit silly, and I think you maybe should, how about Choice Helmet? Choice Helmet is a lovely little tool that reduces damage done to you from attacks from EX and GX Pokemon by 30 damage. That means that against EXs and GXs, you're actually taking 60 less damage. So that Zoroark that I said would be able to do 120 and get a one-hit KO. No, they won't. Because they're not actually doing 120, they're doing 60. Even if they pull out all of their tricks, with just the ability, they'd need a Devoured Field, and they would need a Professor Kukui. And to be fair, there are a bunch of lists that do play them, and if you've got the tool, they would also need a Field Blower. And sure, maybe they've got a Field Blower and a Devoured Field and a Professor Kukui all in one turn to take a KO on a single prize Arcanine, and you know what? If they do, fine. If your opponent is going to that much effort to KO a single prize Pokemon, there comes a time where you've got to say, you know what, mate? Good work. That was a nice KO. You went to a lot of effort, and you did very well. When they do that, I think it's a kind of a handshake, pat on the back kind of deal. Because the fact of the matter is, this is a great ability. And I'm just talking about Arcanine here. You're protecting all of your bench Pokemon here as well. So let's say, for argument's sake, you're playing a Charizard deck. Problem is, your opponent can start trying to hit the bench. Well, this can help you out quite nicely. Your Charmander here they're getting a bit of protection. But really, this isn't the most relevant one. And again, these are weird situations, but let's go through some. How about you've got an Eevee and your opponent's got a Weavile? Eevee has an ability in 60 HP, Weavile does 60 damage to each Pokemon with an ability. Now, admittedly, it would do 30 damage to Arcanine, because the ability would mean it takes the damage, but then it would take 30 less because of the ability. But this would mean that instead of doing 60 damage and KOing Eevee, it would do 30 damage and fall short of KOing Eevee. But let's say you're playing Lost March and you've got a Hoppip on the bench. Hoppip has got 30 HP, and your opponent may be using something like a Latios from Shining Legends to do 30 damage to the bench as well. Or something like a Buzzwole, or indeed a Pheromosa and Buzzwole, or Buzzwole and Pheromosa, Buzzmosa as I like to call it, to do 30 damage to the bench, get a KO on that Hoppip. Arcanine is going to mean they don't, and yeah, sure, your opponent can play a Guzma, or your opponent can play an Escape Rope to get it out of the active, and if they do, they do, but if they don't, then you are rocking and rolling here, and you are able to protect those Pokemon on the bench. The real question for Arcanine here is, are you going to play a Stage 1 Pokemon to leave it in the active to get the protection? You could just play something like Skypillar the Stadium. Although again, Field Blower would get rid of that. Arcanine is probably slightly safer than something like a Skypillar. So what we really want here is this ability on a Pokemon that can attack, because Articuno's got kind of a nice ability which stops your opponent using supporters on your bench water Pokemon. Basically, it stops Guzma. The thing is, no one's playing Articuno to protect your water Pokemon on the bench, unless you can also attack with it, but Articuno's got a nice little ability, well, nice little attack, 70 damage, and then you move 2 water Pokemon to the bench. Articuno's ability is not in and of itself enough to play it, though it is good. It is the attack in the early game that really helps you out. So the question is, can Arcanine do this? Can Arcanine get the same level of attack here? And the answer is, not quite. Fire, double colourless, 90 damage. Now the good news is you can use double colourless energy here. That's very nice indeed. It is vulnerable to stuff like Enhanced Hammer, but that's always a risk you take. And it does 90 damage. Here's the thing. 90 damage should 2-hit KO almost everything. There'll be the odd thing you don't, but time you build in Choice Band and Shrine of Punishment, you should essentially be getting a 2-hit KO on anything. So you bring in something like a Pikachu and Zekrom, you're doing 90, with Choice Band 120, times 2 for the 2 attacks, 240. Oh, look, Pikachu and Zekrom is going down. Even something like Latios and Latias, well, you've got Shrine of Punishment, so you're fine. Now, there is Eevee and Snorlax, which is a little bit of a pain here. Eevee and Snorlax will mean that actually they've got 270, 240, but then again, 10 after your turn with Shrine of Punishment, 10 after theirs, 10 after yours. If they don't get rid of Shrine of Punishment on their turn, you will even be 2-hit KOing Eevee and Snorlax. So essentially, Arcanine here has one very specific use. Keep it in the active, 2-hit KO whatever your opponent has, while protecting your bench and staying alive. Because if you can 2-hit KO with Arcanine, while your opponent is 2-hit KOing, at the very least, you're trading prizes. 1 for 1. But the alternative is you're trading 2 for 1, or with a Tag Team GX, 3 for 1. And at that stage, you are actually faced with a Pokemon that is really quite useful. I don't like that it is essentially 2 energy attachments. That is a thing that really puts me off here. But with a Choice Helmet, you're taking 60 less from attacks. You're protecting your bench, and I don't think Arcanine is a Pokemon in and of itself. I don't think it's a deck. I don't think you just play Arcanine. I think what you do here is use it as a Fire-type Articuno. And you can even use Kiawe in the early game to get the energy on, turn 1 Kiawe onto a Growlithe, and then from turn 2 onwards use Arcanine. But what you do here is in the early game, you attack with this, while protecting your bench, while you probably get 2-hit KO'd, but while you 2-hit KO yourself, put the prize race in your favour, and then you bring up something like Blacephalon to do the rest of the work. Or you bring up something like Flareon to do the rest of the work. I think if you're trying to make an Arcanine deck, it's probably not going to quite be good enough. But I think if you use Arcanine for the first couple of turns while you set up something else a la Articuno, I think there's a bit of potential here. So I'm going to be giving it 3 Wassies, and maybe that ends up being a little bit generous. But ladies and gentlemen, that is a risk that I personally am willing to take. But at this stage, I'd very much like to know what you think about this. So please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. But please do remember the important rule here. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays, where we talk Transformers and Keyforge and other games. Wave 2 of Keyforge has just been announced, and it's looking nice. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.